Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. We were out on the river last night for a Wednesday nighter, and I could not believe that we have water temperatures that are pushing 70 degrees, and we're still in the middle of May. And I got to tell you, one thing that excites me about more than anything when it comes to fishing up here in the North Country is it means we're going to have a good long summer. What I mean by that is the fish are going to be done spawning. They're going to be able to go set up, get into their summer haunts, and they're really going to establish themselves in some of these areas. When we have a cool spring, generally what that means is it prolongs the spawn to the point where the fish are moving out of the spawn, getting into their summer haunts, and they're really starting to group up. At the same time, we start having cooler nights because now we're pushing into the early part of the fall, which is like the start of September, if not sometimes the end of August. And those years generally lead to some tougher fishing because the fish just get spread out a lot more. Well, in this case, we're going to have the spawn that's pretty much over at this point, which is, I'm going to say, almost a month early. It really is. And from that standpoint, you're going to have a lot of fish that are going to start to group up. We're going to have water temperatures that hopefully start getting significantly warmer into that 80-degree range, and that's going to set up two really good bites for us. One, your deep weed line bite, your outside edges are going to be really good, as well as your really thick grass, when the stuff that you're either going to punch or you're going to frog. So I'm sitting here watching the heavy hitters tournament right now that's going on Lake Toho, and it's getting me amped up because they're down there in Florida absolutely jacking them on this guy right here. And this is a bait that Berkeley came out with last year. This is the Berkeley Swamp Lord. They've got both a regular frog as well as a poppin' Swamp Lord. And from the Berkeley side of things, guys, I can tell you they were so excited to come out with this bait. The problem was last year when it came out, there really were no good frog lakes on the tournament schedule. So I think a lot of the anglers were not fully exposed to how good of a frog this actually is because there were no tournaments where it really was a factor. And not this bait, but a frog in general. Well, this Toho event has opened up everyone's eyes to how good the Swamp Lord actually is. So I wanted to talk about some of the features to it and why I think it is one of the better frogs that's on the market right now. The first thing really goes down to the body on it. Now, there's a couple of cool things. The first is it's a very, very soft frog. And to me, that is probably the single most important thing when it comes to frogs. Some frogs have really good shape, they get bit, but the body is too tough, meaning it doesn't collapse enough, which then either prevents you from getting a hookup or it leads to a lot of skin hook fish. And when you're frog fishing, a lot of the times you have to really winch on that fish to get them out of that thick cover. And if they're skin hooked, you're not going to pull them to the boat. They're going to come off at some point. So the body on here, very soft body. It's also, they've got some amazing colors, as well as the legs being very limber rubber material, which is something that I think is important as well. So the body on it is really good. I will say it's a nice wide body. It moves a lot of water, and because it's a larger cavitied frog, one nice thing about that is you can add weight to this, whether you want to put rattles or little split shots in it to add weight, you can do it. And because the body is a bigger body and a wider body, you're not going to have to worry about all of that preventing you from collapsing that material on the hook set. So that's another really good key. Now, another thing I want to point out here is the hooks. They've got the hooks positioned so well. So I've been able to play around with this now for about a year. I've caught a pile of fish on it. And one thing that I love is how perfectly positioned these hooks are. I find myself with other frogs frequently having to either open the hooks up or actually close them up because the hooks aren't in the right position. In this case, they're perfectly right on that top bend. So as soon as you condense it just a little bit, those hook points come out. Now they're made with the Fusion 19 hooks, which honestly, if you're not aware of how sharp the Fusion 19 hooks are yet at this point, you've really been missing out because they are some of the sharpest hooks, if not the sharpest hooks on the market, almost to the point with treble hooks where they're annoying because you can't even grab the bait without them sticking to your hand. And if you're watching the heavy hitters tournament like I am right now, you see how hard these guys are reefing on these fish to get them out of this really thick hydrilla. So there's no concern at all about those hooks opening up on you. They are extremely sharp, extremely strong hooks, which again is a major, major benefit to having a good quality frog. And then the last major thing I want to point out here is how well positioned they've put the weight on the backside of the frog where the hook actually provides support for that weight. So that weight does not fall out nearly as much as other frogs that are on the market. And then at the same time, if you can see it here, this little black, they've got like shrink wrap around the hooks, which actually prevents water flow from getting in your frog. So with a lot of other frogs on the market, you make a handful of casts, you grab your frog and you squeeze it, right? It makes that squeaking sound, you squeeze the water out of it. You don't have to do that with this. This is a frog where you don't run into that same issue, and it all has to do with that little bit of what I think is just a heat shrink on the back end of it there. It does a great job at keeping the water out. And like I said, importantly, that weight is really locked into position. So phenomenal, phenomenal design on the frog. I know Bobby Lane had a lot to do with this. Bobby Lane's a great frog fisherman from down in Florida, and I've been very impressed with it. But if you want to see some conclusive evidence of how good this frog is, go watch some highlights from the heavy hitter tournament that's going on right now on Lake Toho. I think out of the top 10 on the final day right now, I think there's 5 guys that are throwing it in either some form of the regular frog or the poppin' swamp lord frog. Both of these are key players that we're finally getting to see a good frog tournament. I'm also going to throw in just a little bit of I don't know, something that I've kind of noticed. I mean, this is a tournament where, generally speaking, you'd have quite a bit of forward-facing sonar going on with the shell bed bite, but because the lake is low and there's no current, that's also allowed the grass to grow in extremely well. It's pretty cool to see some of the old school hammers doing extremely well in this event, and they're doing it on things like frogs and vibrating jigs. So it'll be interesting. It's actually the final day right now. I think they're going into they're right around the midway of or the end of the second period, and the weights have all gotten pretty close. The fish are starting to bite. So I'm gonna get back to watching the end of that because I'll be really curious to see what prevails. And I'm willing to bet you right now that it very likely could be a Berkeley Swamp Lord frog. So give them a try, guys. If you haven't tried them and you like throwing a frog, this is going to be a great frog year, especially up here in the north part of the world, because the weeds are going to grow in really well. We're going to have high water temps and the fish are going to set up in summer phases. I'm excited for it. Hopefully you guys are too. If you enjoyed today's video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.